So I've got Richie here. Richie, part of the 32 top cut in the Las Vegas regional, actually playing the same leader that I was playing in the regional, but an incredibly different list. So I wanted to bring him in as he's a Vegas local here at Tier 1 Card Shop. Thanks for opening up the store for me before hours so I could do this and not have any disruptions. But Richie, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a little early. Still have my coffee, but ready to jump into this and ready to learn a little bit about your deck because I heard some rumors and people like Cross, I think we're talking about it the night before or something about this green yellow law, as you can see on the deck list that we've got here, not playing any 7-cost law. So that's the big thing. And as you take out those cards, you got some other stuff. But before we get really into the deck, kind of tell a little bit of people about you, some of your other accomplishments, because I don't have a device to pull up your Limitless page that I know you have.
Oh yeah. I actually need to combine my limitless pages because I have the two. Like one with my name and then one's the Bandai username.
Oh yeah.
So I need to get those combined. But I've topped a couple times. First time topping was with Dofi back in OP03. And then I think my next couple tops were with Sakazuki, super broken deck.
Mhm.
missed that guy. But after that, topped maybe a couple more times with Dofi again after he got super broken with the starter decks.
I was gonna say there was a time when after I moved here in 7, 8, and the starter deck coming out that you were just ramming Dofi left and right.
It was just more so like I was glad to be back on Dofi, with all the new support, and I was just like, yeah, the deck's amazing. So hopped onto that, and then after that, I was kind of soul searching for a little bit. I think OP10, you saw like I was playing GY Law for quite a bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really working out. I think just for the meta that we were in, it was a little difficult to make it work, especially because Blackbeard is definitely a super hard matchup, and you need a lot of luck to get that one to go your way. So with all the Blackbeard running around, like it's super hard to make the deck work. Kind of gave up on it for a little bit, and then yeah, now we're back.
Yeah, I was going to say, even though, I mean, we'll talk about matchups and stuff later and how we feel about the different decks in the format. But back then, Blackbeard, even though it's still like a really good deck now, there's just a couple more decks that are inserted into the meta. It's just more diverse than where we were at. So kind of makes it easier for a deck like Green Yellow Law to break through. Now, I do have to ask, did you play Red Green Law before? I was going to say, because I know a lot of Green Yellow Law players are like, trying to feel that, red green law hope.
The nostalgia, right?
Yeah.
I definitely played a lot against it. As the Dofi player back in OP03, that was like the worst matchup was Red Green Law.
Mm-hmm.
I played against it a lot. I don't know why I didn't play the deck initially. I think at the time I was probably still just like getting into the game. It was a lot to kind of pick up because it's like I'm still trying to learn the game mechanics. So me trying to do like a whole bunch of combos definitely like out of my left field there. So.
Mm-hmm.
I do like really enjoy the deck, and I do think it kind of reminds a lot of people of RG Law, which is super cool. And I want to say it's almost like it is like balanced in a way because like you're ripping your own life, and at the same time like you don't need to flood the board anymore. You just need total 5 costs, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I played this too, a little bit different, but I think one of the things that I noticed in some of my games is I was really aggressive in taking life in some matchups, and I was like, ooh, this is like my 7th Dawn turn, and I'm at 1 life now. Like this feels really crazy and really tight. So it's crazy the different things that you can do. But going into the deck now, let's talk about the deck. We've got it laid all out here for people, but we'll talk about some of the pieces. Kind of talk about the core pieces of the deck. No matter what version of this deck that you're playing, you're going to be playing these specific cards.
Right. So I guess the majority of the core would probably be these top 2 rows here.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely the 12 searchers at the top. I think the searcher ratio you can kind of adjust to, of course, like your preference. Everything can be adjusted, but I do think like these 8 are for sure mandatory.
I agree with that.
Yeah, these are literally like they find you everything in the deck. Luffy's obviously the best one because he's just a 1-cost searcher. Look at top 5, and you're going to be constantly bouncing it back, replaying him. Kid Killer is great for obvious reasons when you're going second. Just by himself, playing it on 2 Dawn, searching out another piece, and then potentially being able to combo on 4. Pretty good. Also, the secondary effect, comes up sometimes with the 1-up room, or if you decide to play a different event, a different counter event. But I do like to include the full 4 copies of the Searcher Bunny. I think it's just better to have a total of 12 searchers, just because they let you bridge to the other searchers. So if you don't open the Luffy or the Kid Killer, you see Bonnie and you feel okay because the Bonnie can potentially find good Kid Killer, which could find you to a Luffy. So at the end of the day, it's just like you need a searcher to find the rest of them, and you'll eventually get to them because there's 12 of
Yeah, it's pretty easy to find them overall.
them.
You've also got the one cost Beige in here. Very very nice. Beige and Bonnie kind of working hand in hand, right, in this deck.
Yeah. I would say the majority of the time you do want to see the beige just because being able to manipulate your life for one is like the cheapest way to do it. And of course, that combos very well with Cavendish. Just going into 5 Dawn, going Cavendish, beige, and then having a Dawn for your leader to do another 5 cost. Pretty big tempo play, pretty insane, puts you far ahead. Blocker Bonnie is a little bit better going second, just because like if you open, let's say Kid Killer on 2, and then you can search into the Bonnie on 4, lets you do your leader effect without needing any additional cards besides the 5 cost that you're going to be playing out.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say too, like a lot of times, you talk about the 2K Beige. You love playing that 2K Beige down on the field. This deck, super interesting because one of the things that I learned kind of as the tournament went on, because the 10 rounds that I played in the tournament were like the first 10 rounds that I played with the deck, like just going into it.
And you did good too.
It was, you did better. But anyways, the leader effect, just simply picking this up is just a huge deal in general, right? Like it's basically like just playing it for 1 Dawn, and you don't feel like a lot of other decks, Scratchman of Pooh can work as well with that, where you're just like playing a 2K down, right? Mm-hmm. You're leaving a 2K from the hand and we've seen this in like the Hiroshima championships, the Kyoto championships in Japan, where people literally just use leader effect to pick up any one of these like 1-drops that you've got, 1 or 2s.
Yeah, I'd say it's a huge, like, once you play the deck, like you kind of understand a little bit more of like what to pick up and when. There's a lot of times where you have to play out a 2K Apu or a 2K X-Drake to remove something on your opponent's board, and you might not end up being able to pick it back up just because you need to pick something else up. Most of the time, you're going to pick up your beige because you want to be able to combo again for the following turn. So you may need to play over your 2Ks at times, which can suck, but pretty much all the 2Ks are playable, which I think you can't complain about that. All the 2Ks having some sort of good niche or utility is really good. But most of the time, you do want to be picking up your 1-cost Luffy, your beige, or potentially like your Kid Killer searcher, so you can keep like re-spamming them and generate like more infinite value.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing that I knew at least heading into the tournament with this deck is that the more that you search, the more likely you are to win in the game. Yeah. Just constantly playing those searchers to find every single one of your pieces. So let's talk about some of these 5-drops right here. This is what I would say is your core 5-drops.
Yes,
I would say. And then you are a little bit heavier on the 5 restand law. A lot of people that I've seen usually play 1, 2 at the most, but you're playing 3 of them.
I would probably keep these 12 as the core. I know some people like to play with the ratios of these two. I've seen a couple like maybe cut down to 3 and 3. I just think that for the purpose of the deck, you want to be able to maximize the chance of you hitting a 5-cost, which is the whole point of your deck. So you want to play the initial 12. These are definitely the best 12 that you can play in the deck.
I would agree.
Yeah, and definitely Cavendish is something you want to see every game. It's the thing that you're always digging for first, because as soon as Cavendish hits the board, you get to start like generating more advantage with like the restanding Dawn, and then that's kind of where like the restand law comes in, where if you stick a Cavendish and you're able to play a restand law on top of it, you're generating even more value because you're getting 2 swings. You're also restanding 4 Dawn. So with that 4 Dawn, play another blocker, you can search again, you can play Tashigi to protect your board. There's like a lot of things you can do. You can also just attach more Dawn to your leader so you can swing taller. But I really like the 3 copies of restand law. I think in my testing for a lot of games versus UP Luffy, I was having a lot of trouble closing out the game. I got stuck in a lot of game states where it's just like my opponent's maybe ending on a blocker plus 5-6 Dawn open because they're trying to play around Hody Jones. And in the mid game, like I just wasn't able to push enough. I think that's one of the reasons why I decided to ultimately cut the 7 law, was because on my 7 Dawn turn, especially versus decks like UP and GP, I wanted to be a little bit more aggressive. So I wanted to use restand law as a way to kind of put my opponent in a position where they don't feel too comfortable doing the normal plays that they would have done. Because the 7 law, it's a good card, don't get me wrong. 7-9, get a heal and basically use your leader effect for free. But the problem can be that versus decks like UP, where if you let them get to the late game, it's just going to be like completely in their control. So you
Hmm.
want to minimize that as much as possible and kind of just like, get as many cards out of their hand and try to get closer to the game.
Yeah, just seven cost law is just a more conservative kind of game plan where you're like you're just trying to stabilize in a sense, but the more time that you give, as you're saying, yeah, it really hurts out. This card is insane in the deck. I found out through the different games that I play that like a lot of times there was situations where I'm like I'm playing five cost Cavendish and I'm playing Capone Beige right after it, like
Right.
protecting that guy because this guy is what is the big reason why like things live in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, how your game plan continues after that first turn where you get to play
Right.
five Cavendish.
The blocker beige is super insane. Definitely one of the best additions that came out of OP11. I mean, these two were the only additions that really came out in the starter deck and OP11.
Mm-hmm.
But beige being the main addition, just because he doubles up. He is a blocker that also pseudo protects your board. So a majority of the time when you play out a beige, your opponent feels kind of disincentivized to remove your board because basically they're healing you and then just giving you a free leader effect, which is something that you don't really want to give GY Law another leader effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good card, but it's also not full protection though. So that's also the reason why I'm playing these 2K Tashigis here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, when the Cavendish gets removed, whether or not he gets sent to life or not, it's just a huge tempo loss for the deck. So when you play against a deck like UP Luffy, who plays a lot of things like God Thread, 9 cost Mom, 9 cost Mihawk, like these things that are able to easily clean out the Cavendish, um, you just want to be able to like guarantee that the Cavendish sticks onto the board with something like Tashigi's. Tashigi's like a full protection, will not leave the board no matter what you do unless you double remove it, which is pretty hard to do on a deck like UP Luffy.
Yeah, like most decks in general cannot do that.
Right. The double remove is like super hard to do, and then especially if you end on a Tashigi and a beige, it's like it's a nightmare for your opponent to look at.
Yeah, your opponent just might as well ignore, the threat on the board,
Right.
essentially.
And then that just makes it a lot easier for your Cavendish to stick. And then the following turns, when you go Cavendish plus Restand Law, you're just generating more and more value.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of want to widen the gap between you and your opponent of you generating value, tempo, and aggressiveness at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Now, kind of talking about the one ofs in the One Piece trading card game, I hate one ofs. I think it's not like Pokemon where like you can literally look for anything in your deck at any time, right? Like One Piece is very different in that you have to try to find it, like draw into it, whether that's having 12 searchers or whatever.
Right.
But in this deck, you're talking about the 12 searchers and constantly finding these.
Mhm.
I like these. So kind of talk about Vroom first, because we've already kind of talked about X Drake. Kind of talk about why Vroom, because I had this card too, and I was like, I don't know about this card, but I kind of feel differently after the regional.
Yeah. I want to say for the longest time, I was not the biggest fan of Room. I do like to emphasize the consistency of you hitting your initial combo. So seeing an event in your hand kind of like limits that. I think most of the time I was trying out 2 Room for a while, and very often I would find that he just kind of like sits in my hand,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're just like not able to hit the combo pieces. But I just kind of took like a different approach to it. So originally I was playing 4 Tashigi, and I just decided to cut 1 2K for the Room. It's basically like counter for counter.
Yeah.
So nothing like too big there. And then at the end of the day, it's a searchable 1 cost event, which is just a guard point. Um, but I think it just comes up a lot more versus the Luffy decks because you're able to catch them off guard. A lot of them don't really know the card exists, or maybe they do, but like they're not going to respect it because it might just be like a one of. And you can really just steal the game because your opponent maybe like Usohachi's your beige or law blocker tries to go for game, and then you hit them with the one of Room. You're getting a free 3K counter and then restanding the blocker. So you force your opponent to basically waste 3 Dawn because they spent 3 to Usohachi your blocker, and then you just restand it for free.
Yeah, I was gonna say in situations too, like this was really like an end game kind of card. Like the only time I was using this was for the actual end game, like either getting aggressive and swinging with these guys to clear out bodies or something like that to really push for game in the next turn, or to be able to go in and swing at life, to be able to try to get something and then have them restand to be able to defend in the later section. So this card was crazy. This card was good, but you do have to remember one thing that I found out in one of my matches is that you know, a lot of people think that you can just get the 3,000 power, but in order to get the restand, you have to have 1 life or less. But both conditions have to be when you're at 1 life or less.
Yes.
So it's very different than like many of the other cards that we have right now.
Right.
It's almost like it's nerfed in a sense in that way because it's ultra specific to
Mhm.
a certain scenario. But I thought this card was really cool. I thought it was nice.
Yeah, I was kind of like along the same thoughts as you. I was thinking that because you specifically have to be at one or less, it's conditional. So at times it can kind of sit in your hand and not do as much. I think it was for me, it was slightly worse when you're playing the 7 cost law because generally because of the 7 cost law, you kind of hover around like 2 life sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like with the way I play the deck and because I'm not playing the 7 laws, I pretty much aggressively rip my life to 1 or 0 like almost immediately. And the blocker law is almost always sideways in my games. Pretty much, if I don't think I'm going to die on the previous or the following turn, I will always turn the blocker law sideways, just because he's still a 5/6, so you need to get the swing in a lot of the time, and that's kind of like what makes or breaks some of the games is. How many times your blocker law was able to swing and get enough cards out of your opponent's hand, so you can eventually go for a lethal play.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to talk about the boss monsters a little bit now. We already talked about 7 cost law and you know why we've left that out.
Right.
2 kid is interesting, right? I have 1 kid in my build, and I feel like kid is almost like an unnecessary piece, except for like Bella Betty, Zoro, you know,
Right.
like a couple of those matchups. And I have slammed in, I think I have a 3 Hody Jones in here, and I was a little iffy on Hody Jones because at least in the regional, Hody Jones won me at least 3 games,
Mhm.
you know. So kind of talk about why you've moved it down to 2.
I guess some of the reasoning is similar to why I cut the 7 law as well.
Mm-hmm.
Was I don't like to see a lot of bricks in my hand. So if you look at my list, there's only the 4 blocker laws, the 2 kids, the 2 Hodies, and then you can technically count room as a brick. So I have 8, maybe 9 bricks if you count the room. I believe most lists are playing, like 4 blocker law, maybe like 3 to 4 Hodie, 1 kid, and then the 4 blocker law. So it comes out to like 10 to 12 bricks.
Yeah.
I just wanted to emphasize me being able to like see the initial combo and being able to like play it. So I didn't want to see too much top end in my hand at the start of the game. The 2 Hody decision was kind of just like a testing thing. So I believe this third copy of Restand Law was actually the third copy of Hody.
Mm-hmm.
But in my games versus UP, I found out that Hody was not winning me that game a lot of the time just because it was just sitting in my hand. I was waiting to kind of go for lethal with it, and then it just never came up as much just because my opponent's like playing around it very well. So I was just like, okay, maybe I switch that out for a restand law so I can kind of push a little bit harder in the mid game and then make the closing out end game lethal math a little bit easier. I could say that you can kind of do whatever you want. I don't think 3 or 4 Hody is incorrect. It's just in a deck like this versus like a deck like Bonnie where you're 5 life leader who doesn't rip your own life, you can kind of afford to just play Hody on curve, just rip your own life. But not in this deck. You can't really just slam Hody on 7, rip a life, and then kind of just go from there because it puts you in a very vulnerable position, especially because Hody can be played on 7 sometimes, I think. There's some very niche scenarios. It's just most of the time you're probably not going to get away with slamming a Hody on 7, and then your opponent will probably, try to maybe press your life a little bit harder just because you rip too many life.
Mm-hmm.
That's also one of the reasons why I'm not playing Zeus. I think Zeus is not a bad card. It's just very time sensitive in a way because you kind of need to see Zeus in the first couple of turns because most of the things that you want to pop will be 5 or less, and then as you get later into the game, like Zeus kind of loses his value because most of the time you'll be at like 0 life, so you can't really rip a life to pop something. Um, but yeah, it was just mainly because I didn't want to rip too much life, and I don't really like seeing Hody on curve. It's just
Mm-hmm.
more as like a closer.
I was gonna say I'm glad you brought up the Zeus point because I was playing Zeus in my list. I was playing a full 4 copies of
Mhm.
Zeus, and he at least won me 2 games. But kind of talking about how the targets that you're looking for are 5 or less, so you're kind of doing it in the first couple turns.
Right.
The games that I can think of that I won when I beat a green purple Luffy, it was because I ripped out a Sanji pudding that didn't have stage right on curve basically. So that's in the first couple turns, and then against blue purple Luffy, I blew up their Zorojuro that they played on 3 on my 4. So kind of yeah, I mean I can see how you think that because like you do have to take that life in order to get that KO effect. So in the later stages of the game, Zeus is kind of just like a 2K in hand and
Yeah.
doesn't really have too much value that you play down and you pick back up kind of sense.
Yeah, I would say Zeus is a little bit more synergistic if you are playing a seven cost law because you can kind of afford to take the extra life
Hmm.
because seven cost law will let you still use the leader effect later on into the game. But with a build like mine, where I'm pretty much just trying to leader effect as much as possible, on average 2 to 3 times a game, and because of that, like I can't really spare the extra life to kind of rip with Zeus most of the time. Because usually I will be taking one hit for free, ripping 2 life, and then kind of sitting around one, just kind of like hovering to see if I need that last life to use another leader effect or not. And in that case, like if I played a card like Zeus, it could like kind of ruin the tempo of the deck. Where I think the payoff is very worth if you're able to hit it in the first couple turns of the game, but it is also unsearchable for me. So I was just kind of more emphasized on the Tashigis just because I wanted to guarantee Cavendish sticking on the board so that my restand laws have a little bit more value.
Hmm. So now we're going to be going in with a kind of matchup chart. I've got this whiteboard here. Ignore that it's a calendar whiteboard. But Richie, you're going to be going in and you can do this, do all of them, and then we can talk about it or whatever. This is matchups. So blue circle is going to be good matchups. Red X is going to be bad matchups, and then the black line is just going to be like a neutral, like something that you would see as like a true 50-50
Okay.
or something like that. So go ahead, fill that out, and then we'll talk about that when you're done.
Probably going to look slightly weird just because I've only put 3 blue circles here.
Yeah.
I want to
Well,
say a lot of the matchups are closer to 50-50, but
yeah, I was going to say like a matchup or a deck that has a lot of 50-50s is still like a good deck in general, right? Because you have a chance against everything.
yeah, I want to say something similar to this so we can kind of talk about that.
Okay, so you have the best matchups for this deck. You've got blue, purple Luffy, you've got Buggy, and you got a Nell.
Mhm.
So kind of talk about those three real quick.
Yeah, so UP Luffy, um, generally GY is going to be favored because the amount of tempo and aggressiveness you're able to put out kind of pushes them a little bit earlier than what they want to do. They naturally want to drag the game out a little bit longer because they generate so much value off the leader effect. Look at top five, getting to choose what they draw, drawing 2 cards a turn, pretty insane. But our deck, of course, gets to pop off on 5 Dawn, put out multiple 6K bodies that are able to, for no Dawn investment, just keep taxing our opponent's hand. And especially when you're playing against a 6K 3 life leader, if the UP Luffy is not able to hit 10 Dawn for that many turns, you're basically just turning them into a 3 life leader who just like gets run over really quick. So generally that matchup's a little bit favored. Buggy, I would say Buggy is heavily in our favor as well. Buggy is a little bit too slow of a deck as compared to GY Law. Generally, Buggy's like one of the faster decks in the meta just because he's able to spit out multiple 7Ks, but I think GY Law is a little bit faster than that. And we also have the potential to ruin their curve. So if, they, of course, like we both want to go second, but if you lose the die roll, you're able to stun his Dawn going 5 Dawn sometimes. And that could be like very game winning because it's almost as if
he can't play the game,
yeah,
right?
Like
he can't play the game. And it's interesting that you kind of talk about that because Buggy against aggro decks, right? You talk about like Betty or Zoro, they're like, promo Buggy, what do you do
right
at that point? But naturally, with Green Yellow Law running all 5 costs,
thankfully they're all 5s.
They literally don't care, right, about that promo Buggy. So it's like you can't. Buggy typically being able to stop aggression very easily cannot stop this one. And as you're talking about, like Stun Bonnie, super good in the matchup.
I agree. Also, another thing is they are pitching cards for their leader effect. They're also pitching cards for a lot of their bodies to play. So in turn, that is just like it just gets a little bit harder for them because they don't have enough cards to kind of defend out the amount of pressure and aggressiveness that we put out. So like in the middle of the game, you're just going like 5, 6, 6, 6, and he's got to spend a lot of cards on his leader effect. Now he's got to spend a lot of cards defending his life. It's just like a really hard for them to find that balance.
And then you talk about Anel real quick too, because I lost to an Anel in the tournament, and I truly had no idea what I was doing. I would say.
I would say like Anel. I want to kind of compare this matchup to what RG Law versus Anel kind of looked like before. Basically, it's the same concept. Our deck spits out a bunch of tempo, a bunch of bodies before they're able to even get online, and also our deck rips our own life. They can't starve us, so Gadatsu in their deck is virtually almost useless.
Hmm.
Yamato at times is probably not going to hit anything on our board that's relevant. So basically, until their 10 on turn, it almost feels like you kind of have like a free window. And also, the deck plays like a bajillion blockers. So whenever they want to swing like a 12 into your Cavendish, you just go like free block with a beige or a Bonnie blocker. So you're always able to keep your board healthy.
Hmm.
I just think we're too fast for them to really take advantage of. The only way I could see is just like maybe getting a little bit unlucky on the triggers. But even then, like if you're able to set up the protection properly, it can be pretty easy. It's just at times you get unlucky with an L, just yellow decks.
Yeah. And so now go into your neutral matchups. And one of the thing I think you're very humble on this with your different matchups because green purple Luffy, me with no practice on the deck 3-0'd green purple Luffy. So I was sitting here coming into this conversation being like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'm favored. It might be like 60-40 or something like that, but I feel like I'm favored because I feel like even in the one of the match, my round 10 match, I had a slow start. Like I had a very late first leader effect. Still had a pretty good handle on the game just simply because Hody Jones, like just doing a real good stuff in that match. So kind of talk about your different neutrals that you got, especially like the different Luffys, that are really popular. Lucci, there's still a lot of copers on there, coping. And then like Yellow Kid as well, which is always, I feel like when people forget about Yellow Kid, there's always a Yellow Kid that just tops.
Oh yeah. So I'll start with the GP Luffy. I think generally GY Law will be favored,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that kind of depends on the GP Luffy's build. I've seen very very different lists across the tops. I'd say like some people are choosing to cut Luna, some people are playing maybe one Luna, multiple copies of Luna. I think with the more copies of Luna that GP Luffy plays, the matchup gets significant, a lot more worse for us, just because a lot of the time we'll end with like 3 to 4 6K bodies, and then they just go like Luna, and then from there you're kind of just in a really bad spot because you basically have no swingable bodies, and you're staring at like a Luffy Taro, maybe like double Sanji Pudding or Zordro or something like that. So it can be a little bit tough to close out the game if they see multiple Lunas, but if they don't see Luna, I would say the matchup is generally pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
Just because our curve going first and second is both really good in this matchup. If we go first, we just want to see full combo. If we want to go second, we have the potential to stun their Dawn going to 5, so they can't play Sanji Pudding. Also important to note that you can do the same thing going to their 7 on turn, so they can't Luffy Taro as well. So you kind of like you just want to buy yourself more turns of them not having bigger bodies because they're probably one of the only decks in the meta that kind of put out enough bodies and tempo that can kind of match our deck.
Okay. And then kind of move into some of these other ones like Lucci and Yellow Kid then.
Yellow Kid, definitely an interesting one. I would say you probably wouldn't expect to play one, but just we know that we have a local.
Yeah, we got Landon out here who plays a lot of Yellow Kid, and it's really hard.
Definitely one of our goats.
Yeah.
He has been playing Yellow Kid for 2 sets now, and I'm pretty sure every time I pair it to him, it feels like a nightmare. The matchup itself can be a little bit difficult. It's a lot of back and forth based on how explosive your start is versus how slow his start is.
Mhm.
Because, of course, our deck is a little bit better in the early to mid game, and then as we go later, his deck starts to shine a little bit more because he's got things like a 7 cost Law, 8 cost Kid that essentially become a heal or a trash life plus a 9K blocker.
Mhm.
It's like super hard to get through that, especially because he's also a 5 life leader that heals, turns his board into blockers. So it can be really hard to kind of close up the game. But I want to say it's 50-50 just because if you have an explosive enough start, it's kind of hard for him to keep up. So if you go like, full combo on 5 with the Cavendish, 7 Dawn, you're like playing out restand laws, and it's just like a lot of pressure for your opponent to be able to handle before they're even able to put out a 9K blocker.
Mhm.
Lucci's kind of the same way. It's a little bit more dependent, I want to say, on what the green yellow starts because, of course, like if you're able to end on a board with a Tashigi or a beige, it gets a little bit more tricky for your opponent to answer. But of course, like if you go Cavendish and we don't end on a beige or a Tashigi, it gets a lot easier for our opponent. Yeah, it just kind of depends on how well you open and how well you're able to kind of protect your board and make your opponent do these kind of like jank plays where they have to spend a little bit more resources to kind of clear the protection first and then get to your Cavendish. So it can be a little bit tricky there. Plouffe, Plouffe is, I want to say like it's close to 50-50, but probably slightly losing for GY just because the deck is also very fast. They just like ramp really fast. They end on like an 8 kata plus a 9 Luffy. That by itself is already like really hard to deal with. And then, of course, they have Gum Gum Giant. So they're very tanky by nature. I want to say versus Plouffe, if they have a slow start, it's a lot better for us.
Mhm.
And then, of course, if they only see the one big body, you're able to kind of just chain freeze bodies on it, so that he can't actually keep swinging at it to generate more tempo into you. And then from there, you can kind of just like swarm him with the 5 cost, depending on, of course, if he's on the taller build or a Luffy Taro build. I would say the Luffy Taro build is probably a little bit harder to play into, just because he goes a little bit wider, kind of like playing at the GP where he goes like Luffy Taro into a 5-6, which is like super hard for us.
Mm-hmm. And then now moving into the bad matchups, we don't have to talk about extensively all the bad matchups because you've already talked about Teach a little bit, stuff like that. Bello Betty, you played against like 3 Bello Bettys, didn't you? And you beat them all?
I did.
Did you beat them all? So why is this not at least 50-50? Because you kind of figured out Bello Betty.
I wouldn't say I figured it out. I think I got extremely blessed during my run. Versus all 3 Bettys, I was able to win the dice roll, which is like the first big step to kind of winning the matchup. I think it definitely boosts your winning percentage by at least like 10-15%, because it is pretty much impossible to beat Betty when they go second. They see everything, which is like double searcher, Ivankov Crossoon. It's like 5/5/5 into 4.
And we're talking about either 5-cost Ivankov or 4-cost Ivankov,
Right.
just playing out cross. There's so many different ways to cheat out that guy.
Right. It's just too much tempo for us to deal with on our side, and like especially when you're giving up so many cards early like that, it can force you to either give up a combo piece that you may not want to give that early, but you kind of have to because they're pushing a little bit too hard, or you're just not able to see the pieces in time, or maybe not enough blockers, and they kind of just overrun you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, going second is definitely the first step, and a poo plus X Drake help a lot. You definitely want to see Apu and X-Ray just because Apu lets you clear out the early searchers and the Kumas early in the game. So you want to be able to swing into those with just your leader, and then with the X-Drake later on, you can kind of do some things where you like X-Drake their Karasu, swing into it. You just want to bleed as many cards out of their hand. You never want to swing into Betty.
Until like when they have nothing going on and you've got a full board.
I would say like the best time to swing at Betty is when you've set up enough blockers to where you know you're not going to die to the crackback plus a potential trigger out of life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they're sitting at like 1 or 2 cards. So you want to get to the point where you bleed them, completely drive resources, and you put them in a 2-turn lethal, but you know for sure that you're not going to die because you have potentially an 8-cost kid or multiple blockers set up.
So then, what's the other one? I want to talk about Purple Black Luffy right here because Purple Black Luffy, I feel like a lot of lists that I've seen as of late in the couple weeks with the starter deck meta, everybody's moving away from like the removal aspect of the deck, right? Especially those starter deck Sanjis that were first introduced in the deck. So having it be more of like a Plouffe or green purple kind of style where it's like just purely like ramping and playing out bodies, why is this a losing matchup?
I would say the main reason is just because the leader is able to turn himself into a base 7.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more awkward versus, like if you go versus UP or GP, they're only a 6K leader. 6K leader is pretty easy to swing into with all of your bodies. They're all 6Ks, so without any Dawn investment, you're able to demand a card out of their hand. But versus PB Luffy, it kind of ruins your curve a little bit because you're forced to attach a Dawn onto your leader or an extra Dawn onto your 6K body so you can even demand a card out of their hand. And then, of course, like being a 7K plus having access to Gum Gum Giant is really hard to kind of break through. But even with Hody Jones, it's like 7K leader by itself already does a lot. And the deck, I think, plays a lot of 2Ks just naturally. So it's just really hard to kill them. I would just say that like the matchup is tough, but it's not unwinnable. I would say 7 Law definitely helps the most into Purple Black Luffy. A 9K stat line swinging into 7K bodies most of the game is going to help out a lot. It's just more so if you're able to kind of either answer the beer Luffy, which turns him into a 7K, or the 6-cost rush Luffy, which kind of just like keeps spamming attacks at you and then potentially puts you on like a lethal position. it can also kind of depend on if you're able to drop an 8 cost kid and whether or not the opponent has Gamma Knife.
Hmm.
I found that in my testing, even though 7 cost Law was good into purple black, it was mainly only good versus this matchup. And so I decided to ultimately cut it for the kids because I found that in my games, if I was able to play a kid and my opponent doesn't have Gamma Knife, it's pretty much just like a lock in win at the point. But if they do have Gamma Knife, it gets a little bit harder to win. Of course, if they have Gamma Knife plus this 6 cost Secret Luffy, it gets even harder because they can Gamma Knife your kid, and then they have now multiple swings to go at you for potential lethal.
Hmm.
So the matchup overall is just a little bit tougher just because of 7K lead.
And then Bonnie right here. Bonnie kind of breaking out in the scene, especially the Vegas regional. I think there was like 3 in the top 8 or something like
So,
that.
yeah.
Like crazy number. Probably Bonnie's best performance, I would say, since it's
100%.
released in OPO 7. Why is this losing?
Bonnie is really hard just because Bonnie, by nature, mitigates your aggression.
Hmm.
They get an extra Dawn to where they just tap something, either your leader or your Cavendish, whatever you have on the board. And a lot of the time, it gets kind of tricky to play into Bonnie because you have to think about this leader effect the whole time. So, um, if you decide to swing with your leader first and they rest your Cavendish, you just lost out on 2 Dawn. And then if you do it the other way, you still have to put a Dawn on your leader. So you're essentially wasting a Dawn
Hmm.
because after you swing the Cavendish restand 2, he's going to rest your leader, which already has Dawn on it. So it's like you lost a Dawn there. You're just kind of losing a lot of like value throughout the game because of the leader effect. It's forcing you to do less swings, forcing you to have all your characters rested so they can starve you. They can kind of just like swing into the bodies instead. And then of course Akos Kid. Um, Akos Kid is extremely hard for our deck to deal with. It's also really hard to swing into. We don't have things like Gamma Knife to reduce the power. We just kind of have to hope that they're kind of lower on cards in hand or maybe more bricks in hand so that when you swing like 888 into it or like 1010, it's a little bit harder for them to defend it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're one of the only decks that literally doesn't have anything to answer to an 8 cost kid, even though we're playing 8 cost kids.
Yeah.
So
I would say the matchup can kind of come down to like an 8 cost kid war
hmm.
sometimes. The only problem is that Bonnie plays 9 cost Shanks. So if you don't have a Tashigi to protect your kid, you kind of just lose on the spot if they have the Shanks because you just go kid, no Tashigi, and they go Shanks, pop it, and then whatever you do on your turn, they go drop their own kid, and then now you're very behind.
Yeah, especially when Tashigi, one of the few cards in the deck that's not searchable.
Right. Um, I would just say like if I were to go back into like a non-top cut format, I would potentially cut the room for the 4th Tashigi,
Hmm.
just for the consistency. I do like Tashigi in a lot of matchups just because Nine Mom and Luke, UP, and then versus Bonnie, you're going to need it versus the Shanks. There's so many interactions where the Tashigi is so much more valuable in that moment because he guarantees that your Cavendish will stick.
Yeah, I was gonna say, kind of talking about it, like Tashigi makes a whole bunch of sense for this matchup. You're gonna talk about any deck that has like
Any
removal in
removal.
black, red rocks and gamma or not gamma knives, but just really any sort of removal type stuff, KOs and things
Mhm.
like that. So I really like the idea of Tashigi in the deck.
It even comes up like a lot versus red decks.
Hmm.
They're almost all playing like Mole Pistol. If you're playing like Zoro, Marco, potentially Shanks, maybe if they're still out there. But even versus Betty, they have things like Zeus, Kuma, which can potentially pop your beige blocker. There's like a lot of interactions where you just want to put out Tashigi just to make sure, just in case you don't get cheesed by something like that.
Yeah, I remember in one of my Bello Betty games, or I played against one Bello Betty, but we played like 2 games because it ended in 10 minutes. Um, he beat me both times, but one of the games I had to go. I was going second, so I did double 1-drop searchers to start. And I
Mm-hmm.
was feeling really good because I was like, oh, I can play like this Bonnie in my hand in the next turn.
Right.
And I would be at 5. I'd be able to use the leader effect, kind of build the board a little bit. And then on his 4 down turn, he said Kuma KO one of my Luffy's, and I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
like I can't do this now. I'm only at 4.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to see like how that kind of played out.
Yeah, I would definitely say like versus Betty, Kuma's probably the worst thing that you can see, just
Yeah.
because regardless of if you're going first or second, them popping your searcher or your beige is going to be like very game breaking,
Hmm.
and especially if you're the one that's going second and you want to be able to leader effect on 4, if they Kuma on their 3 down turn, you have no way to leader effect on 4. You kind of fall a little bit more behind.
Yeah. Blue Purple Luffy, the best deck. And we're going to play one, maybe 2 games of this matchup, just to kind of show you guys. Because this is the one, if I were to practice and expect multiple in a regional, I would either do green purple or blue purple Luffy. And I think blue purple Luffy, especially since it just won the regional, especially with the wacky build of like Rosinante, Don Quixote, Dofi, like there's just going to be more out there. Maybe not all necessarily in that same build, but at least in some capacity they'll be out there. So, all
At the end
right.
of the day, the decks they're all going to be playing Nine Mom, Sanji, God Thread. So
Yeah, like the
it's all
core
things
is
to watch
there.
out.
So, got 8.
8.
You also got 8. 6.
6.
You choose.
I'll take first.
Okay. Let's see. I'm also going to be trying to channel my inner Ikaila Kai and try to figure this out. So I have that. If I'm going second, I have to like think about like what I'm doing. I think I'm going to mulligan.
I'm just gonna like show my hand to the camera so you guys can kind of see some of the thought process. Yeah, so we've got 3 searchers, double beige blocker in hand. I would say this is typically a hand that's very capable going first, of course, because you have multiple searchers already in your hand. So you just want to be looking for things like Cavendish plus beige. So this would definitely be a keep. Most of the time, you're looking to mull for at least 1 searcher plus 1 combo piece. So most of the time, that would be searcher plus Cavendish or searcher plus 2K beige, maybe, because the searcher will either find the other piece or the searcher will find another searcher so you can dig again.
And yeah, put out your life for this game to be quick.
1 done. I will play a Luffy searcher. The top 5. And there we go. There's the best combo piece of all.
There we go.
Cavendish.
Now I need God Thread. And draw turn, and I will pass it off to you.
Gotcha. Draw for turn. So we always want to be swinging 6 into UP Luffy. If you can afford it, I would say on this turn, if you don't have the full combo pieces, then you should definitely try to spin again. So we always want to start with a search just in case we need to search again. So we did not see the combo piece that we're looking for here. In this case, I would just grab the searcher Luffy so you can try to dig again. Even at the cost of you not being able to swing this turn, it's just more important that we hit the 5 down combo on 5.
And so now that you've searched 15 cards, right, how much do you think about what you're putting in the bottom and in the order? Do you typically think about that?
I do. I would say most of the time, I just try to keep in mind like key cards that I see. Like if I see 2 Cavendish go to the bottom, I have to keep in mind like, okay, I probably won't see another one. So it's a little bit more important for me to keep the one that's already on the board. If I see things like a Hody, I definitely stack the Hody to the top, and then later on into the game, I just try to keep track of searches and stacks of 4. So if you know you've done like 5 searches, you know your 20 cards, and then Hody's probably the top one. So as you get a little bit deeper, you can kind of keep track of where the Hody is, or potential things like the 1-of room, things like that. You just want to keep track of the 1-ofs, of course. We'll grab the beige 2K.
Good card.
And then I'll pass.
So draw for turn. Holy smokes, this hand. We're definitely going to have to play another game. So I'm going to swing 7 at lead.
Pretty much always take the first one.
So then I'll go 1 for gear 2 to go ahead ramp, and then I'll pass it off to you.
Right, so always want to start with your Cavendish, of course, and then his effect. Stand 2 Dawn. And then we're going to go 1 for beige, so we can do our leader effect.
The ideal combo coming in.
Put the blocker law there, and then this is your bread and butter combo: is Cavendish, beige plus blocker law, having anything on the board. Leader effect. We always bounce the beige back so we can replay it. Of course, it's also a 2K. Law effect to bounce this, and then we will play out a beige blocker to kind of pseudo protect our board. And then 6 to you.
6 to me. So another good real reason that beige exists right now, especially, is now that I'm going to be going into a 5-6 on turn. God Thread, very active, right? And still a very good card. So this is a very, very well-timed play. Yeah.
Ideally, you would want Tashigi here, but of course, you're not going to see Tashigi every game. It's unsearchable. This is the second best thing. So, of course, like if he does decide to remove it, Cavendish will just go into life, and then we can just replay it the next turn for free. Pass.
So draw for turn. That's better, I guess, but it's not really helping me right now. Can't double ramp this turn, unfortunately, but I can put myself in a position to where I'll be at 8 in the next turn, so that's really nice. Maybe I'll just really try to pressure you down and go 9 lead.
9 lead. So I see that he's tapped out of potential God Thread option, so he's only got 4 Dawn left. This is kind of one of those moments where you have to be very conscious of pudding versus UP Luffy, especially because they're able to just look at top 5 and go, okay, I want pudding now, I'm going to draw it. It is almost impossible to play around pudding as GY law, so you want to be very conscious of that. So right now I'm at 7 cards in hand. He's swinging 9, so I know he can't God Thread anymore. I'm very inclined to just give you the beige blocker here so that I don't have to take this extra life and go to 8, potentially 9 cards in hand.
Yeah, especially when I'm leaving 4 up. Like, that is prime pudding time. So
Right.
I'll go here, and then I'll pass it off to you.
Gotcha.
Leaving 1 Dawn up.
And so here I can kind of display a little bit of the restand law value, because these are the kind of turns that you want to be using restand law, is when Cavendish is stuck and you want to push your opponent. He's going to be going to 10 Dawn as well, so you want to be keeping that in mind. Can we play out another beige? Can we also play out a Tashiki if we have it? Looking at our hand here, we have to first spend 2 Dawn so that we can untap it with our Cavendish. So we'll go ahead and start with a Bonnie Search for 2.
Basically a free search at this point.
Yep. Free search here. When you already have one of these in hand, you typically want to look for something else because you can always recycle this. So we will be grabbing the blocker law here. And then we just want to think about how we can maximize the value of this turn. So if we swing the Cavendish, we go back to 7 Dawn. We can play our restand law here to swing again, and then restand another 2 Dawn, and down 4. But typically, the character that you restand with the restand law, you want to be able to swing a little bit bigger because you're getting those 2 swings here. So I would say here, you want to push a little bit. So we can do something like, this. We'll go 7 lead. We'll restand 2 Dawn here.
So restanding 2, you've got 6 Dawn left. I assume you're going to cheat out another body, probably play a body and cheat out a body, potentially. I think maybe I'm okay with taking this first one. And, I definitely think I want a Gravity Blade right now. And thinking about the different targets, I guess maybe not knowing your build and how aggressive you are with the restand law, right? If I'm thinking of like my build only having one of them, I'm like, right, okay, I'm probably not thinking about that. Probably so what is the most valuable? Yeah. So I think on average, I'm just going to hit this law.
Sure. Which is also pretty good because we were going to swing with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say in most cases, your opponent's not going to assume that you have a restand law or that you're going to play it this turn. So they'll probably just take out the guaranteed swing, of course.
Yeah, especially because like if I think of like, my 1 of essentially, maybe 2 of, a lot of them are just saved until the end game. So I may not be thinking about it right now when I still have 2 life.
Right. So here we will go ahead and do a restand law for 5.
And I immediately get paid for it.
And then we'll swing another 7 to lead, restanding another 2 Dawn here.
I think I'll go ahead and Usohachi out that one.
One thing I want to highlight is when he's still, a little bit higher on life and he's not lower on life, you don't really want to be swinging 8. They're going to be very incentivized to just take it. You want to get cards out of his hand, so you want to swing 6 and 7. 7 is pretty good just because the deck naturally doesn't play any 2Ks, and if you're able to get Usohachis out earlier, you're a little bit safer into the end game when you see like, okay, cool, he's got 3 Usohachis in his trash. So here we can go ahead and replace the Kid Killer here for 1 to play beige. We'll take our top life, place a blocker law here, and then I will do the leader effect to return this beige, play blocker law, and then blocker law effect to return the searcher Luffy. I'm going to play out another blocker beige, and then from here we'll do another 7-tier lead.
I think I'll go ahead and take this one because I need to find things at this point. So,
and that'll be passed to you.
Before I do this, I remember that I have a leader effect now.
Pretty good
4 and 5. I have to find a straw hat kind of card. And I think especially in this top 5, I think I'm just going to go ahead and bottom this. I don't think I really need any of these things, unfortunately. Yeah, so and draw for turn as I get all of this. So at 9 Dawn, there's a couple different thoughts that I could have. I could go like a Lin and put something in the life, right, that he can immediately play out the next turn. Probably would have to be the Cavendish, if anything. Or I could go ahead and play Katakuri, so then maybe I could like Gum Gum Giant in the next turn, try to filter out this hand. And even though it would be, you would still have all these things on the field, like it would just kind of push a little bit slower. So then next turn I can still use leader effect because I don't know what this top 5 is at this point because I just bought them. So I think I'm going to go maybe the Katakuri route, and maybe because I'm not healing a life, maybe I'll just swing a raw 6 at this Cavendish, try to force a card out of hand.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and give you a 1K searcher Luffy for that one.
And then I'll go ahead and just play the Katakuri down now and then pass off the turn.
Gotcha. We'll draw for turn here.
So at least with the AK blocker, I know that I'm going to block one swing.
The Katakuri is quite annoying, just because most of the time, if they play a bigger body and they turn it sideways, we're able to just kind of keep freezing it with the freeze body. But the Katakuri is one exception to that, of course. He restands himself at the end of every turn, so can't really chain a freeze body on him. So here we're kind of in a position where he did not play a 9-mom. He's kind of revealed that he also didn't have Sanji. He bottom decked his stack, so he doesn't know what's coming up. We want to be a little bit more aggressive on this turn because he had such a not so optimal turn for the leader effect here. So we want to be a little bit more aggressive. The body searcher's stuck. We can always just search with that. So if you can see in this search, generally I don't like taking this card versus UP because unless you have Tashigi in hand. Otherwise, if you play an ACOS Kid and they have Red Rock without you having Tashigi, it's virtually a wasted turn. So here we want to pick up the Restand Law, be a little bit more aggressive. And also, as you can see with my hand, I don't mind ripping this last life on this turn as well. As long as we're able to put ourselves in a position where we have 2 to 3 blockers, a good amount of counter in hand, we can be pretty aggressive with taking this life. We don't want to give our opponent any free block value. Want to be swinging 8s here, especially because he's at 1. Going to be demanding 2 cards. We'll play over this. We'll search again because it's basically free for us. Another 2K is always nice. And then now that we have 2 Dawn rested, we can get this Cavendish value off. So we can go ahead and start with an 8 to leader using Cavendish effect to restand 2 Dawn.
I think before I try to take life or anything, I really need to filter out the hand. So I'll go ahead, Gum Gum Giant, draw 2 and see what I get. Super interesting.
All right. So from here, probably want to demand another 8 face here with the Restand Law.
So I know you have Restand Law in hand. I know that you can just play him down and swing another 8 at this point. I think maybe I can go in and just gear 2 to go to 9.
Still want to be as aggressive as possible here. Definitely want to keep the blocker law standing just in case we need to use it as an actual blocker. So we'll go ahead and tap 5 for blocker law or restand law to restand our Cavendish here. Here we will swing another 8-tier lead, restanding another 2 Dawn.
So another 2 Dawn. I'm either going to see a swing from the Trafalgar Law character or leader, and it's probably going to be the leader, if anything. So I think I'm okay with just taking this and seeing what happens. I probably want to hold this in hand. Let me tell you, Richie, this was not a good game to showcase. Well, it's a good game to showcase what you're doing. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I think I might as well just have this in hand.
Here, of course, we already swung the 8 just so we can get our 2 Dawn back. So now I'm thinking about if I just swing 7, he's just going to free block it. So we will just go a 6-tier lead.
And I think I'll just go ahead and free block.
Gotcha.
Get that value now.
So we did force him to free block, and we do have the option here of just keeping our life open with the Dawn open, potentially fake a room in hand, or because he did decide to free block it, we can actually freeze this Katakuri. So what we can do here is tap 1 Dawn. We'll go ahead and tap 1 Dawn here. We'll just play over the Restand Law, play our beige to rip our life here.
So that's something, if you're a blue-purple Luffy player trying to figure out this deck, maybe you just wait until everything's committed, really, to go in with this free block right here. Try to block as the last thing.
I would say in that case, like you kind of have to, just because it almost is the last swing, unless you think I would turn this sideways.
Yeah.
But yeah, just because we swung the eighth first, and then now because we ended on the six, we forced the free block, and then
Hmm.
now we can do something like this where we go leader effect, play the Bonnie, freezes Katakuri. It will restand on his following turn on the end phase. However, he doesn't get a swing with it. So now we're a little bit more comfortable just having two blockers and seven cards in hand. Most likely not going to die this turn,
Hmm.
and then we'll go ahead and pass.
So
And now our
that,
opponent is staring at a completely full
oop,
board.
I'm at 8. 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think probably I grab this, right? That's the top. Yeah, that's got to be it. Okay. So grab this, then go back into this, draw for turn. And I'm feeling not great, but I think we're doing not terrible. This could be a lot worse, but it's pretty bad. I can't use any Dawn, so I'll go ahead and just swing another 6 at the Cavendish. Even though I know you have a lot of cards in hand, I got to do something.
Yeah, we'll give you a counter here.
Then I'll go ahead and Sanji into 9 Mom, and pitch Godthread, probably, I would say. Go ahead and heal. I guess attempt, I mean, no matter what, it's going to go in the life, just simply because of the Capone effects. So
Right.
I gotta put Cavendish back. I can't afford to put anything else really.
Sure.
So, and then end of turn, I'll restand the Kata. If I can survive this turn, I can do damage, but I have to survive the turn.
Right.
Like,
and you have how many cards?
I have 6 cards in hand.
6 cards in hand. This
You
is one of those
know-
scenarios where Hody would be super insane.
Yes, Hody would be so good here.
Right. I of course don't have Hody here. Unfortunate, but Hody is definitely a really good card in certain scenarios. I would say that of course, Jake kind of low rolled this game. A lot of the time on the turn that he went Katakuri is probably the turn that usually they will go Sanji into 9 Mom, and then at that point they actually do not need to play any more big bodies, so they can kind of just hold up 4 Dawn open plus a blocker potentially like a blocker Nami, things like that. Let's see what we can do here. So I'm kind of looking at, do I have lethal on board potentially? Do I think I have lethal, and then whether or not I can think about extending the game another turn. We do have 2 blockers here. I think I have the potential to put out 2 more blockers if I really wanted to. It's just more so about, is extending an extra turn going to help me win a little bit better. I don't think we want to commit too hard early, so we can start with something like an 8 to leader. Just see how our opponent responds before we do anything else.
An 8 to leader. I think I'm going to go ahead and do this now, just because I know what this card is right here, and it won't be too detrimental to me. So I'll go ahead, I'll do this, put 2 away, then I'll draw 2. Just kind of want to cycle the hand a little bit, I think. Because I've also seen 2 restand laws. No way I'm going to see 3 restand laws, right?
Most likely not.
Yeah. No way I'll see 3.
At that point, you're probably thinking, like, my opponent doesn't even have a third one in his deck.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I saw the third one, that'd be a little high rolly. I'm trying to think about the position here. So we do need to think about living potentially 4 big swings, potential Uso Hachis in hand. Can I take a look at your trash?
Yeah.
I believe we saw
There's a lot of
use
events.
a couple Uso Hachis earlier.
Yep.
We did see him use 2 Uso Hachis here. So we get a little bit more leading towards the a play that extends the game, because we know that he's used 2 Uso Hachis in this case. I guess this is where we could probably go with something like a Kid Killer Search. Spend 2 Dawn.
Hody Jones. Oh my, all the Cavendish.
Quite an interesting search, I'll say. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll take a Searcher Bonnie. Now I'm just thinking about, do I want to use my leader effect for a Cavendish? I think at this point in the game, Cavendish is a little bit too late. We've already extracted most of the value off of the card. I think it'd be a little bit better to play something like a Freeze Bonnie or a Blocker Law in this scenario. So we are thinking about... At the moment, I only have 1 blocker in hand, so I want to be able to end on 4 blockers here if we can. So we should do something like play over the Kid Killer, potentially, for a Searcher Luffy. So we're going to dig for another blocker here, which we did indeed find. A second beige, not bad. So we can go ahead, start with a 7-tier leader.
7 to lead. I think it's fine to just give you the 2K Sanji that I revealed earlier now.
Gotcha. And then in this case, we can go for something like an 8 to leader.
I'm really just curious how afraid I am at the stun. I think the stun Bonnie doesn't matter as much just simply because I have other bodies on the board now to be able to be aggressive on the swings.
Right.
But I think honestly, I want to go ahead and take this and ramp a Dawn back so then I can make sure at least that I can use leader effect in the next turn.
And then with this last on here, we're going to go ahead and tap 1 for our beige. Activate beige effect. We're going to move this Cavendish with a blocker law. And then now we have the Dawn on our leader. We can go ahead and return the beige, play a blocker law. In this case, you are going to have to return one of your 6Ks. But of course, that's better than losing the game. So
and plus, like now you can reuse the restand lock because he's not KO'd.
Right. And then we end on 4 blockers here, and I'll pass to you with 7 cards in my hand.
So 3, 4, 5. What kind of list are you playing, Ruben? Oh my God. This could be interesting, but I think I need to leave just like a bunch of Dawn open because I have no way to get life back at this point. So I think probably my best case, because I think, especially since I know you have the restand in your hand, I'm going to get a lot of swings. So I could just go ahead, grab a 2K out of here. Because I think my game plan is really just going to be, play a couple blockers and leave a bunch of Dawn open, right? Because Hody Jones or like the different events that I have might be able to salvage some stuff. So maybe I go ahead and take this Sanji and maybe leave these on top, I will say. So I'll put this back in the hand and then go to 10, draw for turn. Let's see, this game sucks. Now I have to try to go for board a little bit. I have to try to at least clear this Bonnie, do whatever I can. So I think I'll just go ahead and get 6 into 6, try to see what you do off of this.
6 into 6 will definitely give a 1K. It's very cheap to guard there.
Then now I'll just keep swinging at it, swinging an 8 now.
So an 8, we have to think about very low chance, but on the off chance he has something like double Usohachi in his hand and we block here, it could look very bad for us. I think just based on looking on our hand, I think we can kind of afford to just block here, just give him the beige blocker.
Then I'll go ahead, swing 9 Mom into it.
So if we do block and he does have double Usohachi, which would be the best thing, we have 4 Dawn left to slap on his Sanji, swing 13 to us. I think we're at the point we're pretty safe with 3 blockers up. We can just give him 2 2Ks here just to protect the board.
And then I'll go 9 into the Bonnie.
Now that he is swinging 9 into the Bonnie, would probably be the best time for us to just block again.
And then I'll just have to go 2 Dofis right here for 6 Dawn. So I'm really just looking at the top 3, and I'm really just trying to decide at this point how much I want this top 3, right? Top 5. So how much I want this. I don't think I really want this at this point. I do like that there's more blockers in here, so I can try to elongate the game because I'm just going to lose blockers every single turn, especially these guys. Almost like a starve out method. Maybe I do care about these. Maybe I will keep this on top. I don't know how I feel about this, but I think at the next turn, I'll go ahead and do some bottom decking. And then 4 Dawn up, I will pass it off to you, and Katakuri will restand 2.
Pretty good.
It's definitely a really interesting situation. And kind of what you were talking about in the little matchup spread that we were talking about is how the later stages of the game, right, there's almost like a stabilization at this point because I don't think I'm really afraid of dying this turn.
Right. There are a lot of scenarios where I think Hody is good. It's just more so with the way that the game went, Jake would have had these a turn out earlier, and then Hody would be pretty good in this spot, of course, just getting an extra swing while resting 2 blockers. But it's just more, if you have it, you have it. I just don't like seeing it in my hand when I don't need it, which is like almost 90% of the time. And in situations like these, it's a little bit harder to close out, but I think if you just play the deck a little bit tighter and a little bit cleaner, we can just get there without the Hody a lot of the time. This one looks a little bit doomed, though. We'll say 3 blockers, 4 Dawn up, and how many cards?
I have 5.
5 cards in hand. Let's refresh real quick. We've seen quite a bit of events.
Lots of events this game.
2 giants, 2 gear 2s, 3 gear 2s. 2 giants, 3 gear 2s. I think the only problem here is that if we extend, he just gets an opportunity to do this again, a double blocker, potentially play out a 9 mom if he saw it at the top stack, which could get even worse for us.
Especially because now you don't have beige.
Right. In this case, we're just kind of forced to go for it. So we're just thinking about best numbers here. Numbers are not looking good, I will say. Or we can try to put our opponent on having more bricks in hand. Because we have restand law in hand, we can technically get an extra swing out. I think that is the better route. I highly doubt our one swing is going to get there. I guess with the numbers that we have here, we're going to start with a 6 to lead.
So I'll give you a 2K Sanji to start out.
I think, this is just our best lethal math in this situation. We just have to do another 6. Kind of force our opponent to see if we can force anything here.
Now, the thing with me is I'm trying to think of what are your best numbers, at this point. So
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and block.
Okay. Now we're looking at 2 blockers. We have 2 swings. He has used a lot of events. I think this is where we can kind of commit to like an 8 to lead here, potentially. It's looking like an 8 to lead.
So I'll go ahead and block this other one.
And then we'll do another 8 to lead.
So then I'll go 2 Thunder Bagua to go to 10.
Yep. And then best play here for me is just restand law swing 8 again, which has got a blocker.
Yeah. So I think I could just go ahead and block 2K.
Yeah. And he's got me. So this is one of those scenarios where I can kind of like highlight the importance of Tashigi versus UP Luffy.
Mm-hmm.
If we did see Tashigi on the turn that he hit the 9 mom and lifed our Cavendish, I was holding another restand law in hand, just trying to generate infinite value, which is why I value something like Tashigi, especially in the UP matchup. Beige just doesn't do enough. I think you can kind of get away with just beige sometimes, but a lot of the time, you should expect your opponent to have things like God Thread and 9 mom on curve.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just going to end up losing the Cavendish most of the time. And that just sets you so far behind because I would say for the majority of the game, it looked like I was very far ahead. And then as soon as he hit the Sanji 9 mom turn and then my Cavendish left the board, I was in a very bad spot.
Next turn, I was going to do this. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
block these guys, and I got another gear 2.
Nightmare right
yeah,
here. He gets to
just
go
the
cycle
absolute,
3.
yeah. And I was going to go 1, 2, 3 straight to the bottom. So then my Gum Gum Giant could draw something.
Some better cards, right?
Yeah.
More counter.
All right. So now we've kind of flip-flopped the table. Richie's still on this side now playing blue-purple Luffy. I am trying out the green-yellow law. Definitely not as experienced in green-yellow law as Richie, but we'll see if I can kind of adapt what I know into this different kind of play style, with the different changes of the deck. So I do have a Bonnie Searcher in here. I do have a Tashigi as well. Tashigi can put a lot of work in this matchup, but I don't know how I want to do it because the turn's kind of awkward because if I Bonnie the first turn, it's not like I can play Bonnie the next turn because I'm going to be doing some searching. So I think I might just mulligan, try to hope for something else.
Did we have beige in that hand?
No, no beige. So it's kind of tough because it's definitely a weirder spot.
Mm-hmm. I think that might have been a keepable hand. It obviously, of course, comes down to whether or not you find Cavendish in the first 10 cards potentially. But yeah, I would probably mull that as well, just to be safe. Most of the time, you don't really want to be forced into a position where you go like 3-cost Bonnie on your 5-Don turn to do your leader effect, because then it's like you're playing a 5-cost for ripping your life. Essentially, you're not gaining any extra tempo. But we always want to see full combo whenever we can.
This hand is worse.
And that happens sometimes.
This just is what it is.
You just gotta. There's like times where your hand's really bad, and you just gotta try your best to get out of it.
Pass.
All right. Oh, this is pretty bad too. Oh no.
Well, I had a terrible hand to start. I had like 2 Osohachis, 2 Gear 2s, and a Gum Gum Giant to start. So, whew, okay, I got to start doing things in this game.
I don't play this deck, but I'm sure anybody can tell me this is probably not a good start.
So I think I got to do Bonnie. I got to find something.
We need to cycle, right?
Yeah, we need to find some stuff. So I think honestly, maybe putting the Bonnie here is fine. I don't think I need to do really anything else at this point, so just pass. Can't swing anyways.
And I think Jake is doing a good job of showcasing what you need to do when your hand is bad and you don't find the pieces. It's not going to be pretty, but you need to play out your Bonnie, you need to rip a life, and you need to cycle a card. You're essentially just trading a card with your life, so you're technically cycling instead of it coming out of your deck. And you can do the same thing with 2K Beige. So in situations like this, actually my round one for Vegas, I cashed in my unplayable hand. I opened triple 2K Beige, double 8 cost kid. And I just sat there and went turn one beige. I ripped a life. I put 8 cost kid on the top. I did the same thing on 3 dawn. I still didn't find anything. And then on 5 dawn, I went like blocker Bonnie. I think I ripped the bottom life again just so I could keep cycling. Finally found a playable 5 cost, and I was able to somehow get the game off of there. But you just got to do some crazy stuff. You got to cycle out your cards. You got to find the pieces somehow.
Yeah, especially because like right now, I don't have to worry about removal, right? You being on a 4 dawn. Next turn, I can just go like Tashigi Beige, use leader effect, right?
Yeah.
To be able to move around some stuff. Or really I can just Tashigi to get the Bonnie off and use leader effects.
And I think that's a good play as well because like you're ending on the Tashigi plus a 6K, so it's still pressure and hard for me. And then I'll just swing 7 2.
Yeah, and so I'm just gonna take it because I don't want to leave this Bonnie. I need to be able to use leader effect next turn. Pass. So nothing with the 3. Okay. We're cooking, chat. We're cooking.
You can see why I don't play this deck.
So I'll go ahead. I'll play this Tashigi. Very important card. I'll move into Beige to go ahead and put. Oh, I have
rip
to.
life
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Just
Rip
in case we
life
see
first.
Cavendish, something
Yeah,
good.
no Cavendish there, but I do have that Bonnie at least to be able to do what I need to do. So then I'll go ahead. Here's a good question. In a scenario like this, are you using leader effect first, or are you using the swing first? So if this was a best of 3 and I was playing the green yellow lot, I hit that gravity blade trigger first. So is there a reason to just like, well, either way, gravity blade deters me in some form or fashion.
Right. In this specific scenario, you would have to leader effect first because if I hit gravity blade or red rock and I hit either one of these, you're no longer able to leader effect.
That's true. Yeah. So I would rather you do it after I use leader effect in a sense. So I'll go ahead, pick up my Beige. I'll go ahead, use Bonnie to stun nothing. So it's just a body on the field.
Right.
And I'll swing 6K lead.
Yeah, I've heard that I'm supposed to guard the first life. My hand looks absolutely terrible. So
I think I guarded the first life, if I remember.
I'm sure you are supposed to guard the first life. So
and pass it off to you.
Just 6 to your leader.
So I think at this point, we got the 6. I don't think I want to give you any cards right now because I feel like I want to keep this other Tashigi just in case like there's a God Threat or something that pushes that. I can just play another one. So I think honestly at this point I just block.
A good example as well. Sometimes when you don't want to give the card in hand, you should just use the blocker that you have on the board. Oftentimes you will have to think about whether or not you're playing over something on your board sometimes because you can have those turns where like you have, let's say he kept all 3 of those on the board and he needs to go double searcher, and then now like all of a sudden he's playing over a searcher. Like you just want to minimize playing over searchers as much as possible unless you of course already have another searcher in hand and things like that. So it's just like, okay, cool, we're just filtering.
Yeah, searchers are pretty cool. I hope my deck has some. Like
we'll just do that and I'll pass.
So that is a crazy time at this point.
Yeah.
But now he's got Dawn that's rested, so this could be really nice to use for my other Bonnie. Just continue to play this Capone Beige for free. But also on this, I think I can be like a little bit more aggressive with Dawn, but I think first I want to use the Beige to see what this unknown life is. So I'm just gonna put this there. There is actually a situation where I can double stun in this turn. I don't know if that would be great, but you're sitting at 6 Dawn, you would go to 8.
Right.
I would prevent you from playing Katakuri. Basically, like the 2 Dawn that you ramp, you'd just be sitting at another 6 Dawn turn. It would be a little passive, and I could just do the pokes, but it might not be the worst idea. I feel like just like raw play it. I think I am gonna kind of do that. So
that's not bad.
I'll go ahead and leader effect. I'll pick up my Beige and put down a Bonnie to stun. And then I'll go ahead and swing I want to do this one first, just in case of Gravity Blade. I'll swing 6 at lead.
This one we can take, no trigger.
And then I'll swing another 6 at lead.
Oh boy. I'll give you a 2K.
And then I'll go ahead and just raw play and stun another Bonnie and pass it off to you.
Woo! Oh, this is looking pretty bad.
Who needs searchers? Who needs them?
I guess we'll just go 6 to lead.
And I don't think I want to go to 0 right now. I think my best thing is just to get rid of Scratchman Apu at this point. I don't think I really need Scratchman Apu in this matchup.
I mean,
play another Sanji?
Yeah, guys. Just I'll pass from there.
Holy moly! I will draw for turn. I finally find Cavendish. It's a good day. The thing is with Cavendish though is I almost feel like I have to raw play him because I don't need to rip him off life.
Right.
So
he just comes out for 3.
Yeah. So I go 5 and then I pick back up 2. I have 5 Dawn to work with. I don't have anything else that I would want to play. Probably want to keep one open for my room.
Yes.
So I think probably what I do since I've got this is kind of spread out the Dawn a little bit. So if I do the 3, that means I could go like 2, 2, or I'm sorry, wait. Well, yeah, I could just swing a bunch of 7s, like 7s. Okay, that's probably the play that I should make. So I'll start out with just this 7 first.
This one will take. No trigger.
And then I'll go this 7.
Ooh, it's looking bad. You have how much Dawn open?
I have 7 left.
So I have to play around Hoodie Jones. I will block.
Oh yeah, Hoodie Jones right here would actually be crazy. Ooh.
I mean, I'm sure you guys can see that. We can't afford a Hoodie Jones right now. That'd be really bad.
I think if I would have thought about Hoodie Jones, I would have played this a little differently, but that's fine. I'll swing 7 at lead.
7 to lead. Be forced to take this one too. No trigger.
And then I'll go ahead and play Cavendish down. Oh wait. No. We're fine. Yeah. So Cavendish comes down. I was like, wait, no, they're all attached. They don't restand, but they do. And then I'll go ahead and swing another 7 at lead. And then I'll pass it off to you. I've got the 1-up. I guess I don't know if I need Vroom, but yeah, you get leader effect. I was just stunning Dawn.
Oh boy. I can do something like this. So grabbing Gum Gum Giant, and I stack the rest, right? Like this. Yeah, I mean that's the best I got. So I'll grab Gum Gum Giant, stack that. Grab 2 Dawn. Here you want to be swinging lead. Advice for UP players: if you're in this kind of board state, I would definitely swing lead just because he has the life. We don't want him to potentially keep up that life and do like a restand law with a beige for very cheap. So yeah, we'll go 6 to you.
I'm trying to think about how much I actually counter out of this. I think now's as fine a time as any to use Vroom. I don't think it's too big of a deal, but I'll go ahead and do this.
That's fine. We'll tap 9 for the Sanji. Flipping a 9-mom to -1 Dawn. I will pitch. I guess we're pitching a Katakuri.
And the reason that I wanted to keep Tashigi in for so long is I just rest Tashigi.
Well, this actually goes to life now.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
So yeah, we'll put that at the top, and then I'll pass to you.
All right, so draw for turn, and I am cooking. What's better, Restand Law or Hoodie Jones here? Probably Hoodie Jones.
You can do both.
Yeah,
if you have beige in hand, yes. So I guess like the best way to do this would be.
I have the 3-card combo.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like
this is for sure like the nuts. What you can do here, because usually the problem ends up is like you have like 1 life most of the time when you want to do that, so it can be tricky. But when you have 2, it's very easy. You just get to play Hody and then tap this Dawn basically.
So I think the method we definitely have to play Hody, right?
Right.
If we just slam down Hody, that rests your Dawn.
Rest this for
yeah,
fun,
sure,
yes.
for fun. I don't care about that card.
So probably the one that you want to restand would be the Cavendish here. And then so the way we could plan this out would be probably 2 on Cavendish to swing 8. He would end up restanding 2 Dawn.
Okay, so do an 8K swing, restanding 2.
To me, I will take activate effect, trigger rampant dawn.
Dang, I wonder. No, you always have to. I guess this is fine.
Yeah, I would think you would have to go Hody there first, just to
Yeah.
because like if I have the event, like I'm only playing one still, like
Yeah.
instead of two, so it's like not bad.
Hmm.
Now that you've restood the dawn, you can also
I do have to think about swinging with one
yeah,
of these
you have to
bodies
swing with one of
before.
these.
I've swing with two. Yeah, just one of
Use
them.
two dawn here, swing eight, and then you have another three dawn open.
So like if I restand, that'll be 5 in total.
This can be a six, so you can
Yeah,
start with a
I just
six
do
if you
like
want.
little poke damage because now at this point I'm trying to get the Gum Gum Giant.
Yes,
Yeah.
so six. If we wanted to be like super min max about it,
Hmm.
when you started the turn, it'd probably just be Hody. I guess to play around triggers. No, I think this is fine. Yeah,
Then I think I go 7 now.
seven's pretty good. I'll just
Do it
giant
now.
pitching a. I'll pitch a Mihawk. Draw
Hmm.
two.
Then we do another 7. Be 7, 8, 8. It seems all right. Or yeah, it'd be 7, 8, 8. Nothing in there, Ruben. Your deck sucks. Whoo! All right.
Yeah. I was like, no playables. I looked at my top five and it was like,
But I think honestly, like me having the slow start, just again, like you were kind of talking about how
Mhm.
like you just need to find things, like playing the Bonnie just to
we need to
look to see
cycle.
what's available, using the Bonnies. The Bonnies was huge, I feel like,
Mhm.
on the on your upcoming 8 Dawn turn,
I agree.
right?
Yeah.
Only leaving you at 6, not even giving you the chance to play. When did you find the Katakuri?
I did. So I had both categories in my starting hand.
Yeah, so like preventing you from being able to play that, I think was huge in that.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I would say stunning the one dawn
Oh,
there, very
another one
good.
in the life.
Yeah. The stunning the dawn to prevent Katakuri is correct.
Hmm.
Of course, I'm sure you didn't have another five cost, so you just stun the
No,
second
yeah,
one.
I'm just
Yeah.
literally playing Bonnie because I
Yeah.
have nothing else.
So the second one's there is fine, but like if you have another five cost, just because we have Tashigi on the board, we don't have to worry about Gravity Blade anymore. We
Yeah.
don't have to stun the second Dawn. We can end up playing a Blocker Law, a Restand Law, maybe to get another six poke in, things like that.
Hmm.
I think another like it was a very good game to kind of showcase Tashigi there as well because even though you had a very slow start, the Tashigi was able to just guarantee to protect your board, and it just provides like too much pressure for me because there's so many bodies that are sticking on the board essentially.
Yeah, especially on that last turn, like having that extra swing in instead of, one of those Bonnies going into life and just putting the
Right,
Tashigi in there instead.
right.